Hello and welcome to the beauty of human biology. I am your host, Tricia Reid. We're going to be exploring the language of the chakras and understanding that felt experience of being a human. I look forward to our journey together. My guest today is Barbara Condron. Barbara has been a lifelong student. She began teaching adults the development of human potential in 1975. Barbara is an intuitive researcher, an intuitive reporter with the School of Metaphysics. She's worked since 1977 in partnership with conductors to research knowledge from the inner levels of consciousness, originally focused on holistic health, relationships, family, and the purpose of life. Her work made quantum changes when she met, partnered, and married Daniel, her husband, and raised one son, Hezekiah. Investigating the creative nature of mind, intuitive paths, dharma, chakra function, and became the focus of her life work, which has been shared with many people from around the world. Dr. Condron is known for encouraging students, teachers, and leaders in their quest to manifest I Am consciousness through the choices they make in life. Barbara's main project currently is Master Living, 10 essential life skills for health, prosperity, and success, and peace of mind. Barbara's a dream researcher and has written many books, including How to Raise an Indigo Child, The Dreamer's Dictionary, and Kundalini Rising. All right, I'd like to welcome everyone here today. My name's Tricia Reid, and today I have Barbara Condron. Did I say that right? Barbara Condron.
You did. You
Fantastic.
did. You
Hi,
got
Barbara.
it.
How are you?
Hello.
I'm so excited to talk to you. Okay, so Barbara, the reason we invited you here today is because we are talking about the beauty of human biology and the effect we can have on our own biology. And so with your background with dreams and Kundalini and all the research you've done, I was just so excited to connect with you. So Barbara, please tell our audience a little bit about you.
Oh, wow. About me. Let's see. I have 45 years of investment in mindfulness study and teaching. I've done everything from 20 years invested in peace research and working with dreams, also actually proving that our thoughts matter, which is not news to a lot of people, but to most people still it is. That living peaceably does mean that we have to think peacefully first. And when we do, it affects our daydreaming and our night dreaming and our interactions with one another. Dreams have been a big part of what I've been working with all these years, because dreams are the communication between us, not only between you and me, but also within the self. And I talk about the subconscious mind as being the beloved. The subconscious mind, the inner mind, where most people only meet the inner mind at night, when they go to sleep, when they shut down and they stop talking in the daytime, right? So that's usually the only time that people get to come into the presence of their own soul. And so the dreams that we have at night are essential and important in our everyday world. And they enable us to remember what we've forgotten, and to be able to imagine things that we couldn't quite put together when we were awake. And so there's this beautiful kind of dovetailing that goes on that has everything to do with Kundalini. It has everything to do with our creativity. It has everything to do with the chakras and the transitional points. I now call them converters, because that's really what they are. They convert energy. They convert spiritual energy into material. They convert materiality back into the spirit. And that movement, that flow that's constantly there, is tied to biorhythms. I've also been invested in biofeedback through the years, and am a technician, a quantum biofeedback technician, and that's kind of one thing I've done over here too. So,
what does a quantum biofeedback technician do?
They use devices, computers, to calibrate your energy field. So it's very similar to what I've done in my intuitive research, which doesn't require any machines at all, other than my own physical body and my mind and the development of those. So right now I'm working on coursework about strategic intuition. And I've been teaching people about intuition, how to develop it all these years, because it's all tied back into how are our thoughts real? What causes a thought to exist? The painting behind me is part of my work. It's called Sift Painting. And it actually has a whole process to it that in the realm of mental health and mental health professionals, it becomes a curative device for people with amnesia, people with Alzheimer's, people with depression, people with all kinds of mental and emotional states and or addictions that want to be free of them. So there's a way, there's a way that we can use the mind and body in ever deepening systems that will aid us to be better human beings, aid us to be more loving, more open, more compassionate, all the things that I think we kind of all dream about. I think that this is what this time's about, even though it seems kind of crazy sometimes how it's happening. But I think there is a kind of call to action for human beings to determine what we value in common. It's a very exciting time, and it kind of is nerve-wracking, I guess, with how we're going about it sometimes. However, when you keep it in perspective and realize that some of the things, one person's experience may have an element of commonality, but one person's horrific experience or euphoric experience, either extreme, is usually extreme. It's not really what most of us experience. We may think about it, we may dream about it, we may react to it and say, oh, that's awful. However, most of us are in the middle. And that middle ground is really what we want to curate and begin to move into, I think. A lot of neuroscience right now is saying that we use 20% of our potential. That's 10% more than Einstein gave us years ago, right? So that's good. And so that shows improvement. And I think that with things like, so many things now that are being talked about, and things I know you cover with the people you meet, diet, exercise, the way we use our bodies, yoga, all forms of yoga, hatha, as well as the more mental Raja yogas, being able to understand, the whole homeschooling thing now is part of this. It's part of, reconverting and changing how we actually interact with the children we brought into being. I homeschooled my son, so I kind of had a leg up on what some parents now are just walking into, right? Yeah. So it's very exciting time because we're getting closer to home. We're not getting so far away anymore, but we really, this stay at home, I called it a vacation that we were all being given back in March and April.
Yes.
And
for sure.
we all got a vacation at the same time. I mean, when does that happen? Never, so it's like, but it turned into like quarantine and lockdown and all these kind of aggressive military kind of words, actually.
Yeah.
And that's because there is that element to it. I was reading something in the last couple of weeks, not long ago, near the end of the summer. And the headline said, we are in the middle of the largest psychological experiment ever conducted with humanity.
That's how I've felt this entire time.
Yeah. And then there was a ... Trish, and it said, and we will pay for it. And what it was doing, it wasn't so much being an alarmist, but it was a call to action, a call to wake up and to stay awake. Because many people, there's kind of a low-level depression that's setting in that people don't even know yet that they have, most of them. Mm-hmm. And so part of this journey that we're going to be on is, how do we curate the ego, the human ego? What do we do with that?
What do you mean by curate? Explain that, because I think that's a big deal. When some people are trying to learn how to communicate with their ego so it doesn't take over. Is that what you mean by curate? Yes.
Okay. And by what I mean by curate, it has a very richness in the way that I use the word.
Okay.
Because I do use heal. I've used heal all my life.
I think that's relevant too.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Yeah. And I've been invested in healing all my life. And Kundalini is intended for healing. So all of that fits into the same moving system in my thinking. So when I think of chakras as being the connecting link between the mind and the body, the expression of that is the emotions. Most people right now are realizing that they have some allergies when it comes to emotions. And, you know, they
That's
can be
beautiful.
they
That's
can be
beautiful.
all kind of allergies, right? You know, and all of them are going to be linked to ego.
Yes.
Ways that we have belief structures,
Yeah.
ways that we think, well, I would never do that. I would never say that, you know, and therefore a high level of judgment. So now the work that I'm doing, Kundalini Rising was all about getting familiar with the system that the Hindu yogas have curated or brought forth for centuries, for millennia, really, all the way back to the Vedas. And that's universal teachings. It goes all across the world. It's not just Indian, and you can see it in every culture. And I have a beautiful mandala that some people have called a mandala that is illustrative of multidimensional consciousness. So when I talk about curate, what I'm talking about is delving into that multidimensional consciousness that each one of us exist in, that we actually live and breathe in, that enables us to be alike and very, very different at the same time. And it makes this life so exciting and thrilling and curious, challenging, daunting sometimes. It's the whole human experience and the full spectrum of it all. And that's what people are waking up to and opening to. And it's scary for most people. You know, most people have been pretty locked into DNA programming, if you will, where the brain's programmed a certain way by genetics. And so, you know, if my mom died of liver disease, and that means I'm probably going to do that too. And, you know, I've seen it over and over in families that when there's more than one child, you know, one child will say, I will probably die that way, and they do. And another child never accepted it, you know, never accepted the family curse, and decided to think on their own, to live their own life. And of course, that has a price to pay usually, because it's usually kind of daunting, and flies in the face of the family, and you know, so it brings up mental and emotional issues more than physical ones.
So
But
what you're pointing out is the belief system of each person, even though they were created from the same two parents and grew up in the same home. Then we bring in the word epigenetics. So the epigenetics expression is completely different.
exactly, and also very freeing, because we can indeed choose our reality if we want to. Back in the 70s, I started teaching in 1975, and I was 22. And I was learning teaching. I've been learning teaching all my life, still do. Never, you know, I'll do that until I'm gone. So that's what life's for. It's a schoolroom, right? So, and we're all learning that right now, which is kind of fun. It's like we're all in kindergarten together. And it's like, okay. So I think of Robert Fulghum's, is that his name? His book, Everything I Ever Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten.
Yes.
You know, and one of the things is hold hands.
Yes.
You know, look after each other. I mean, really, just read that book and teach that to your kids, and you know, we're going to do fine, right?
Right.
but in epigenetics and looking at how we can change, when we change our minds, we can train our brain any way we want to train it. And you know, we can train our minds to be brains to be military, and we do with video games, things like that. We can also train ourselves to be creative thinkers that can resolve any difficulty.
Oh, so you believe people can be trained to be creative?
Isn't that amazing?
I
You know,
like that.
there's a natural, well, that's all Kundalini. Kundalini is the creative energy, and we all have it. It's just that most people direct it outward from the body into sexual activity. And what all the yogis have learned, and the masters of consciousness, is how to take that creative energy through using the chakras, through using the natural channels that keep all of us breathing right now, because most people don't have to think in order to breathe. In fact, I would say all of us are like that. And so conscious breathing begins to tap into more of that 80% that people aren't using, right? So as you consciously breathe and you work with just being, not, you know, there's thousands of patterns. just be aware that you're breathing. Just be aware for 2 minutes of when you breathe in and when you breathe out. And be aware to breathe in your nose, and you can breathe out your nose too, or out your mouth, either one. But breathe in through your nose, because it's a filtering system. And it's meant to curate all of your body, to help you out. So if you're mouth breathing, which most people do, then you're breaking down the system. You're not using the prana, number one, which is the energy that actually keeps you alive. You're not oxygenating the body in the way that it needs to be. Well, I'm talking about this because all this has to do with the chakras. It has to do with converting energy. It has to do with the creativity that each individual possesses and they don't take advantage of. So if you start consciously breathing, that's a beginning place, a starting place, where you can begin to take back some of that creative power that you've been giving out so freely. When you do that, then it doesn't mean that you stop having sexual activity. It doesn't mean that you stop loving and expressing yourself that way. That's not it. It does mean that more of that gets channeled back into you. So you naturally become more open, more loving, more compassionate, more blissful, as we were talking about a moment ago. You begin to embrace people in the day with a sense of joy and love and wonder. You reclaim the sense of wonder that you had when you were first a child, when you were first born. And that's so important in the creative process. It's so important in being able to unlock the gates in your mind beyond the body so that you can begin to think different. You know, that was the whole Apple logo or slogan, you know, the first years that it was even about. And in Master Living, one of the slogans that I use is rethink your feelings. So that's part of what we're all being called to do. And that's probably the most challenging for most people, because people just want to feel the way they want to feel, and they want to be heard, and they want to act out, and they want to do this, that, the other, right? And it's like, yeah, well, okay. When I was a little kid, I wanted to do that too. So if I'm a little kid, yeah, I'll give you some space to do that. But the older that we become, which means we have more experience. So the more experience in life that we have, then rightfully so, in the cycles of our life, which go in 7-year increments, we cycle around and we come back to the same point. If we've been growing, if we've been actually invested in life and been plugged in to our soul's message for being here, then we're going to quantum leap. We're going to move like a spiral instead of just treading the same ground over and over and over and over and over, which is what a lot of people do when they get stuck in their genes. Mm-hmm. You know, they get stuck in their patterns. They get stuck in tradition. They get stuck in beliefs. Some people will hear what I'm talking about and go, oh, great, she's advocating just throw all that out and we can do anything we want. No, I'm not. Because there's a pattern. There's a pattern to human beings. We can see it by looking around at other human beings. And granted, we are all unique and different, absolutely. And we each have a part to play, and we need to know what that is and play it, because it's essential to all of us. You know, we don't make it if everybody's not, but people say showing up. I don't like that. If everybody's not being a healing presence, bringing who they are. Mm-hmm. So bringing who you are sometimes means, you know, kind of washing away the, you know, the caked stuff that's kind of, you know, or the butterfly coming out of the cocoon, mm-hmm. You know, and it's great to be in a cocoon. It's not bad to be in the cocoon.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It really
because you existed as the caterpillar, and then you built the cocoon, and now you're growing and you're changing, and that caterpillar didn't know. I love that analogy. The caterpillar didn't know.
Right. And it wasn't supposed to.
No.
You know, and I think about that a lot, Tricia, and I know you got kids too. My son's 25 now, but it's like, you know, all the kids, I've worked with children all my life and still do. And what concerns me the most about our devices, mm-hmm. and the way that they are right now is that, you know, we're really into everything's out there. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I move into a Kuan Yin attitude, and I just kind of cry, you know, I just kind of let it be, because the innocence that I got to enjoy is not, it's not as easily available anymore.
Yes.
And I know that even 20 years ago, I managed to keep my son away from VHS tape. If you can remember that, my God,
Yes.
that's not all I am, right? Okay, so, but we had those kind of video players,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and I kept him away from that for 4 years. But that took discipline on my part.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, I couldn't be flipping it in all the time and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so, and now most people's lives, at least a third of the population of the earth, has gotten into our devices, and we like them. We
Right.
like them a lot. I appreciate them. I use them. I don't use them for entertainment very often.
Yeah.
Most of the time I use them for creativity.
Yeah.
And for communication.
So what comes to mind when you say that, and I want to keep pointing this out to people, these devices, this technology is created to keep us interested in it. It is created that way, but also to be able to take this item and access information anywhere. That means there's a level of energy coming off of it and being drawn into it. And so when we start looking at what becomes a tool for us, I mean, I'll be walking down the street, and if I walk past somebody and I'm smiling and staring at them and they feel uncomfortable, you know what they do? They reach for their pocket where their phone is. If I'm driving down the street and someone's crossing the street and they feel uncomfortable, what do? They pull out their phone and they stare at it. That is a coping mechanism, because the device is actually putting off energy, and there's something about it. It is feeling empowering. So I think that's completely intriguing where you just went with that. It blows me away, but I'm looking at the technology as people aren't weak-willed. They're a normal human that's being drawn in by something that was created to keep them attached to the device. It's not that they're weak-willed, but to point that out and then look at everything that you're bringing into this. I love this part. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, because that, you know, that then gets into the neurotransmitters and, you know, that discourse. And this is the first time also where we have devices that are radiant.
Yes.
Everything else in our life up until this point with these devices was reflected light. So what we were seeing through our body, which is also an instrument, what we were seeing was the reflection of the light. So for instance, when you see, like behind me, you see red, that means all the other colors are being absorbed into this material. And the only thing that the material does not absorb is the red vibratory frequency that reflects back to your retina, and you have learned to identify that vibration, that frequency, as red. Mm-hmm. So we say this is red. People who are colorblind, their mind and their body is not attuned yet so that they can recognize red. Red and green is the most frequent color blindness. And so people with red and green color blindness don't see those colors. They see like gray or some other shade in place of. What you can do though is you can heal that. You can change it with the way you change your thinking.
Okay.
Now, what happens now in technology is that, and I just ran across it, it's on my mind, that's why I'm talking about it. Yesterday I ran into, in an Instagram, this amazing, I sent it out, I don't often do that, this amazing short little video of a teacher who gave one of his students some goggle glasses.
I watched this video, it made me cry.
Enabled him to see color for the first time. And it was, you know, it was one of those kind of like mother moments where anybody who watches that, it's like we're tied in humanity, clicking, going, oh my God, this is so beautiful what's happening here, right? So it's a shared mental and emotional experience. Yeah. That is what this device stuff enables us to do. But you know what? I have a friend, you'll love this. I have a friend who sometimes when his phone gets too hot, overloaded, whatever, he'll say, I don't need no stinking device to be intuitive. And he's right. He doesn't need a device to know when his kids want to talk to him or when I want to talk to him. And he doesn't need that to send me a message so that, you know, I get in touch with him or whatever. It's like, that's the part I don't like about this because of what you just said. It becomes compulsive. Mm-hmm. It becomes addictive. Yes. It's electrically addictive. Pills and substances, foods even, can be chemically addictive. These are electrically addictive. And it's like, okay, so we first have to know that that's true.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it messes with our energy system. It messes up with our kundalini, which means that we stop being creative. We get lazy. Mentally and emotionally, we get lazy in this kind of venue. What I've been most concerned about with the whole COVID, I keep thinking 5 years from now, we're going to look back and go, that weird stuff that happened in 2020 in the summer, what did we do then? What was that? And I do think that's what's going to happen. This is temporary. It's not going to last forever. It's people waking up to the fact that, people are born every day, but you know what? People die every day too.
Yes.
Big news, right? No, except, kind of sometimes I think in our country, we've gotten where we did we separated ourselves from certain ebbs and flows of life. Mm-hmm. From even where the sun rises and sets, because we have artificial light, and now we have this stuff, which we can go 24/7 until we blow up. And some people do. Yes. They really do. It's sad. So we have so much freedom. We think we don't have any, but we have so much that the element of self-discipline has really, the need for it is skyrocketing, which is to say choice. Yeah. We have to make better choices.
So something that comes to mind for me when you say all of this is I want to share the simple idea behind, yes, we can get addicted. Yes, we have a choice, but there is a lot of money being invested in keeping our interest over here.
Yes.
Right? So yes. It's not that we're weak-willed.
No.
We just don't understand how strong this is working against our willpower. So.
True, but the people who are going to get that are getting it. Yeah. And they, and part of that too, that I've seen, Trish, is through the years, because I did global dreaming experiments from 2007 through 2018. Mm-hmm. And so, I've interacted with dreamers from all over the world. And there's amazing stats that have come out of that too. And when people, there was a saying in the 60s or 70s that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yeah.
Well, now it's when the teacher's ready, the students appear. It's both.
Okay.
So where I would have worried about it 20 years ago and did, I've been through that. So, I have been there. And that's not to say that I don't have a healthy amount of fear attached to AI, because I do, and it's healthy.
Yeah.
What I do know, this I believe profoundly, and I've seen it work in my own life and other people's lives over and over and over. And so I have a high degree of faith in it, as well as experience in knowing it.
Okay.
Love is the underlying power for humanity.
Yes.
It's not just some emotional bosh, as Martin Luther King Jr. said in his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, but it's the underlying principle of life itself that every culture, every religion, everything that has ever been on this planet where people came together, they all agree. They all know that that's true. And that has been what has always seen us through. That's not going to change now. Just because we have these electrical devices that are trying, buying for our attention,
yeah,
but they don't love us back. And they're not going to love us back. Right. And so that awakening process that is curating in the individual, some people will get that right away. Mm-hmm. Some people will take a long, long time. Some people will need to come to death's door for it. Mm. I've had several near-death experiences. Mm. I had the privilege of walking with my dad through Lewy body dementia in the last 5 years, particularly. And the dream work that I did all those years is really what saw me through it. And it also gave me more of the message that my soul came to deliver, which is that this attention on dementia right now, even into our politics, and the age of the people running for office, things like that. That whole discussion, it needs to come to the surface because we are all in life together.
Yes.
And we tend to forget that. You know, we tend to be so mobile that we forget that we have relatives, you know, and it's like, I was bound and determined to help my dad because I was his only daughter, only kid. So it all kind of fell on my shoulders. My mom's been gone for a long time. So I was going to make sure that as within whatever power I had, he would have what he wanted. He wanted to die on his own. He wanted to die on his own terms. He wanted to keep, you know, in his apartment and vital as long as he could. And so I was in it with him all the way. And we went on the journey in and out. So I had the privilege, Trish, of sitting in his living room one day. This was about, you know, you never know when the end's going to come.
Right.
And people don't deal with that very well. They really don't. It freaks them out really bad. It's called ambiguity, and I do workshops on it. And it's amazing how you can help people to breathe and you know, just be able to kind of go deeper in themselves into a soul level where they don't live on the surface so much anymore. You know, there was that beautiful song that won the Oscar a couple years ago called Shallow. And I would listen to that. And it was like, it was such a precognitive song for me of what was coming.
How so?
Because most people live on the surface.
Okay.
And that's what you're talking about. That's why they're attached to their devices. That's why they freak out really bad if they don't have it.
Yeah.
You know, I've been there too. I've been where, you know, my phone dies and it's like, oh my God, you know, and I've been disciplined all my life. I know how this stuff works pretty much enough to know I shouldn't get all bent out of shape because my devices go down. However, it teaches me how much investment I've made through the device. And this is nothing more than the bardo. And the bardo is what people are experiencing when they go through dementia. With my dad, modern Western science, medicine, elongated his life, saved his life 4 times, starting when he was about 38. So he had life-threatening conditions that he was brought back from. And so he had these extended leases on life, literally,
Yeah.
that he got to live more. The question becomes, when you get those, what are you doing with them? Are you really changing? Or are you just getting older?
Right.
You know, are you still the same person, just as negative, grumpy, mean, hateful, belligerent, whatever negative things we can be as human beings, nitpicky, whatever, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
it can be small ones too, right? But,
Yeah.
you know, our killers, it can be really, really violent and harmful, you know. So are we really changing or are we staying the same?
Mm-hmm.
So Western medicine and devices, all this stuff gives us second chances. So I'm a big advocate for people taking advantage of their second and third chances.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, when he got to the point where he was going, what happened was because he'd had so many leases on life that extended it,
Mm-hmm.
his mind was leaving before his body was going.
Mm-hmm.
So one day we were sitting, and this is a story that really comes back to all of us at any age. And that's why I tell it, because it's not just a story of somebody at the end of their years, you know, later 80s, because he lived a long life, a good life. He lived,
Okay.
it wasn't any cheating thing, you know, or anything. He got everything. Yeah, it was a good ride, right? So we're sitting on the couch. This is about a year before he's going to go. We don't know that yet. And we're sitting and we're talking, we're in the middle of a conversation. And all of a sudden it's kind of like technology. You freeze,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, he freezes.
Oh.
And I'm sitting in the chair and he doesn't have any diagnosis or anything yet. His mother went with Alzheimer's. So he's been imagining it, Trish, ever since.
Wow.
I mean, actively imagining it. So there's that level of dreaming too here. So, you know, he's been planning on it. So he just freezes. And so I just stay with him. I don't say anything. I just stay.
Mm-hmm.
And then he clicks out of it. And I just smile. I go, you doing okay? He said, why does that happen, Barb? And I said, what? And he said, I don't know where I go. I said, I understand. I said, it's okay. He said, yeah, but why does it happen? Because he knows that I know some stuff, you know. And
Yeah. So,
before he wasn't so interested in listening, you know.
okay. Yeah.
You know, that's the change that people make when they were ready to make it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he wasn't really interested in hearing it before, but now it's real close to home. And that's really the message I want to give to you.
Okay.
Is that when it gets close to home, that's when people make the changes. Because people are not really that open-minded. It's unfortunate to say, but you know, there's a lot of stats to back me up, unfortunately. But there's also stats to back me up that any change can happen.
Yes.
So, you know, there's great hope.
Yes.
And there's also, you know, the availability at any moment it can happen. So in this moment with my dad, I said, Dad, it's okay. I said, I have my moments of totally forgetting too. It's good. Because I knew right then all he needed from me was comfort. He needed to know I was going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
He needed the healing presence that I am. And so from that point forward, we were good. I mean, I watched him, you know, and there were longer periods. We did sifting, which is part of the art stuff.
Okay.
And that was an amazing therapy, working with someone who is in cognitive dysfunction and helping to align the hands and the brain and program that in. It's like when I look at the devices and what are we doing? We're all thumbs, literally all thumbs. We're not using our other fingers.
Okay.
Well, that means we're not lighting up the other parts of the brain. We're just working on the brainstem back here.
Okay.
That links to the thumbs at the base of the skull. But we're not using the rest of what we've got.
Okay.
Which is kind of silly. So, yeah, to say the least.
Yeah.
So I've created a Taraka yoga movement that's called Satyagraha that I teach. And it's based, interestingly enough, upon the movement that Gandhi championed back in the 30s, from the teens all the way to the 40s. And that's a whole story in and of itself that's very topical right now, actually. But Satyagraha doesn't have to do with that. It's not a political application of it, because Gandhi's work wasn't either. It was about morality. It was about value systems. And that's the real issue on the plate for all of us right now. It's not all the other stuff, all the smoke and mirrors and the distractions and all that. It's not that. It's what do we really value? Do we really value love as that underlying principle of life? Not just human life, but all life. And what does that look like? You know, what am I willing to give up? You know, I remember 25 years ago when my son was born, I remember the first 6 months going through a real moral dilemma about whether I was going to use Pampers. I'll go ahead and do a plug. Disposable diapers.
Right.
Because there was enough evidence then that because the way they were made and the plastic and all that, that you could, I was an editor of a magazine at the time, and I'd written an editorial about the fact that there were enough already diapers in landfills that could go from here to the moon and back with a 6-mile arc. And that was in 1995, Trish.
Wow.
I mean, you know,
that's crazy.
And so I'm taking this home. I'm taking it personally. It was like, am I going to add to that?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thinking that people are going to have to do if they're really going to change what they say they want to change now. You know, because it's not going to just happen. And the level of sacrifice is not going to be giving up your life like it was in the last century with the world wars.
Yeah.
It's going to be, am I going to use plastic diapers? And if I'm not, then what am I going to do? You know, and how do I do these things? And a whole lot of forgiveness. Oh my God, do we need a ton of forgiveness going on? Yes. In the Master Living mandala that I started talking about a minute ago, there's 7 spheres, and they each calibrate or resonate to one of the 7 major chakras. And they also calibrate and work with the systems in the thinking. So there are healing affirmations that go with each one of those. There is a way of thinking, or a way of creating, level of creation, if you will, that operates on each one of those converters. So you have a mind thought, a spiritual mind thought first, then it has to have a converter way to actually be manifested into our lives. So we're doing this all the time. We're bleeding our chakras. We're drawing out mind substance over and over and over and not returning back the energy. So when we use it up, we die. So if you keep drawing on your heart energy, for instance, and you keep drawing on it, and you use it up, then you're going to find that you have maybe heart disease as a warning, but you could just have a heart attack and you're out of here. Because you haven't been returning that energy back in, replenishing, recycling. You know, the recycling thing is not just, you know, what you do with your bottles and your plastics and all that. That's practice and it's really good. But it's what do you do with you on a day-to-day basis? How are you returning back to your soul the privilege of the fact that you've been breathing?
It's beautiful.
You know,
Absolutely beautiful.
These are the important questions.
These are the important questions. Join us tomorrow for part 2 with Barbara Condron as we talk about the crown chakra and balancing the spiritual practices that nourish you, connecting with nature, reading inspirational writings, practicing gratitude, surrendering to the will of God, meditation, the cosmos, the pineal gland, dream work, our motherboard, and the absence of connection with a higher power and expanding into a divine disassociation from the body.